Ian, thanks for joining us today for an update on all things Pancontinental Energy. Firstly, for those who might be new to the PCL story, could you just start with a quick recap on your flagship PEL 87 asset in Namibia's Orange Basin?
Sure, thanks Alex. Good to be with you. PEL 87 is a large exploration permit located in deep waters offshore Namibia, some 150 k's off the coast. Pancon is the majority interest holder and operator of the permit. We've been in that permit since around 2018, since which time, certainly the last couple of years, there's been a lot of activity in adjacent exploration permits to the south, all within the deep water Orange Basin, with some very, very major discoveries being made by a number of companies. We've partnered with Woodside Energy last year, who have executed an option deed with Pancontinental, and subsequently they've come in and funded a very large and very expensive 3D seismic survey for the joint venture. We now have received the final data from that survey. Both Woodside and ourselves, our joint venture partners, we're interpreting that data with a view to finding hopefully a number of prospects for drilling in the future.
Thanks, Ian. Now, we understand the PCL team recently spent some time in Namibia and attended the Namibian International Energy Conference. Could you just provide some insight into this trip?
Sure, yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. We were in Windhoek, the capital of Namibia. We were there for a number of days, 4 representatives from Pancontinental. We were there primarily, the purpose of the visit initially was for our regular meetings with the ministry, where we're required to meet with the ministry committee to provide an update on where we are technically with our exploration efforts. So that was good. We also had the opportunity to meet with joint venture partners, which is always good. So we had a bit of a sharing of ideas with them. And of course, the conference was conveniently during the same time of our visit. I believe there was about 750 attendees, a lot of excitement around the place, I think pretty much all of the major oil and gas companies of the world were represented, I believe, at that conference, even those that do not have an upstream interest in Namibia at this time. So my sense of it, when I come away with, I think we can see there's a lot of excitement, particularly around the Orange Basin, of course, with the large discoveries that are being made. And I think we can see a lot of deals potentially coming through the pipeline over the next 6 to 12 months. I think you might see a bit of M&A action within the basin. And we've started to see that just in the last week, with a number of small deals being done. I believe Eni and BP have recently farmed into a permit just to the southeast of us. Certainly things are hotting up, and a lot of interest from all the big companies around the world.
Thanks, Ian. Now, having read through your latest quarterly with interest, we picked up on the significant level of recent exploration and appraisal drilling in the Orange Basin. Are you able to provide an insight into some of the recent discoveries made by these energy giants, and why are they significant for the basin?
Yeah, sure, Alex. I mean, drilling, exploration and appraisal drilling activity has been non-stop at a real rapid pace since just over 2 years ago now, since I think February or March 22. We now have what's looking like a 78% exploration success rate within the basin, with just 2 wells that have not succeeded, and there are good reasons for those. We can explain those dry holes. So this is quite a phenomenal set of circumstances and set of results. More recently, we've seen 4 new discoveries. Over the last 3 to 4 months, we've had discovery by Shell just to the south of their Graf oil field discovery, which is called Enigma 1. All we know at this stage is that they've announced they've encountered hydrocarbons. They haven't flow tested that well, but it appears to be another important result. We've had Total Energy drill the Mangetti 1X exploration well, which was to the north of their 2 billion barrel Venus oil discovery. That's the estimated recovery number. That Mangetti prospect, or the well, was designed to test a separate prospect, but also a northerly extension of Venus. And we believe that's come in. And we're hearing reports that that's potentially 1/3 of the size of Venus. So again, a very large discovery. And probably more important for Pancon and for PEL 87 is more recent news about Galp Energia, Portuguese company, who have immediately to our south drilled 2 exploration wells called Mopane 1X and Mopane 2X. Between them, they appear to have proven up 10 billion barrels of oil in place. That's an in-place number. We don't know the recoverable number as yet. Galp, a large Portuguese company, however, they are quite conservative, I think, with the disclosure. They need to be. However, they have come out and said that, based on the 2 wells drilled to date, that the resource appears to be in line with what they were estimating pre-drill. So this is very exciting. They've subsequently flow tested the first well with a maximum constrained flow rate achieved of 14,000 barrels a day. We believe there is gas associated with this discovery, as there is to the south. We now know the Galp are going to come back later this year and drill 4 more wells, which will be a combination of appraisal wells of the Mopane discovery and also some exploration wells, which will probably be to the north of Mopani, a little bit nearer to Pal 87. So the Mopani wells are about 90 kilometers south of Pal 87. It's confirming the extension of this significant petroleum play from the north, from the south, from Shell and Total's area up towards Pal 87. So we're really excited by these recent results.
Thanks, Ian. Now, turning our attention back to PEL 87, I note that you've recently received receipt of the final 3D seismic data set. The forward interpretation program will focus on leads that exhibit apparent AVO effects. Are you able to provide some insight into this process?
Sure, yeah. We received the final seismic data set, which is a pre-stack depth migration volume, only just in February, actually. So not that long ago. We've been interpreting the data since, as has Woodside, and we're working quite closely with them on that. It's still relatively early days on the interpretation. We have identified a number of Cretaceous play types. So all the discoveries made to the south thus far are of Cretaceous age. So Cretaceous is where it's happening. That's where our focus is on the interpretation. We've identified a number of different types of petroleum play within the seismic data set that we have, the 3D data set. Now, within each of those play levels, there are a variety of leads, and we're at the stage now where we're kind of high grading those for further work. I guess there are two key aspects of the forward work program from here. One is the AVO analysis, and the other is basin modeling. I'll touch on the basin modeling first. Bringing an exploration lead up to the status of a drillable prospect is not just about mapping the structure or a stratigraphic feature and saying, well, we should drill that. You need to do your homework in terms of basin modeling, which is all around understanding the form of the sedimentary basin over time from inception, how the basin was formed, how the source rocks were deposited, and when those source rocks reached maturity, when migration has occurred from those source rocks, how migration has occurred, what is the oil or gas needs to take to get into your trap, and also what is the catchment area for a particular prospect. You may have a very large structure which could have potential for 40 billion barrels of oil in place, but if you don't have a sufficiently large catchment of mature oil and or gas source that can feed into that structure, then you shouldn't be quoting such a large number. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there, and that's underway. And secondly, the AVO work we regard as probably quite key in this area. We're seeing that certainly the Total discovery in Venus and the Mopani discoveries all appear to have AVO anomalies associated with them. That's amplitude versus offset. It's a seismic feature whereby the amplitude from a particular subsurface location varies from one end of the seismic streamer to the other. So the seismic streamer is towed behind the seismic vessel. There are a series of them, I think typically 6 or 8, and that's a 10-kilometer streamer. So we analyze, after sort of accounting for geometric spreading and various other usual factors, we examine the seismic amplitudes of specific subsurface locations near to the vessel and at 10 k's away from the vessel. And what you tend to see often with oil and gas deposits is that the presence of the oil and or gas within a porous reservoir can lead to a brightening of the offsets or a higher amplitude of the offsets that are at the end of the receiver, which is kind of contrary to what you would normally expect. Now, this is an important sort of tool which the industry uses. If you have an AVO anomaly, it may help you to de-risk your prospect or move a lead into the prospect status. I would say it's not definitive, so it needs to be used with caution. So for example, there are plenty of oil and gas discoveries around the world that have absolutely zero AVO anomaly associated with them. Likewise, there are plenty of exploration wells that have been drilled on booming AVO anomalies, which have been dry holes. So it's not definitive, but on balance, you would rather have an AVO anomaly than not. But before you go ahead and drill, you really need to understand any other reasons for that AVO anomaly to exist. And there are a variety of potential pitfalls in that regard. So very detailed bit of work. It's quite compute intensive. It takes time. We need to do it. Woodside is doing its AVO analysis, and we think this is going to be key to progress the variety of leads we have. Perhaps some of them will then be upgraded to the status of a drillable prospect. We look forward to getting that information out as and when we can.
Thanks, Ian. Look, PCL certainly has an exciting position in the Orange Basin, and I'm sure many investors will be watching this space closely over the coming months. All things going according to plan, could you just provide some insight for investors as to what the next 6 to 12 months looks like for PCL, and what are some of the key catalysts on the horizon?
Sure. Well, as mentioned, right now we're sort of knee deep in the interpretation work. It is taking time. I get asked all the time, well, when will results be available? It's hard to be definitive. It's almost the case of we'll know when we get there, but we will provide updates to the market on the various play types as they mature. We're just not at that stage yet. So certainly within 6 months, we expect to provide a lot more color on what we're seeing in the data in terms of prospectivity, leads, hopefully drillable prospects leading to prospective resources. We will then, hopefully during that 6-month timeframe, we would expect hopefully to see a Woodside decision. So right now we funded the seismic to earn an option to farming. If they decide to farm in, then they need to drill an exploration well on behalf of the joint venture, which they will fully fund. That's a big investment. It's probably a 55 to 65 million US dollar well. So Woodside, quite rightly, is doing its technical due diligence, being very careful that they sort of tick all the boxes on the technical studies. But hopefully within 6 months, we'll have some confirmation from Woodside that they're going to go ahead. And then it'll be about around booking a rig and getting some certainty around when that well will be drilled, which I'd certainly hope would be within the next 12 months. And I guess finally, we've got the ongoing activity from our neighbours. We know that Chevron is going to start drilling in their permit immediately to our southwest, and that's going to be, I believe, late this calendar year. We also have Galp, who are going to bring a rig back and start drilling not only appraisal wells on their impressive discovery, but also some exploration wells, which will be interesting and should be a little bit closer to Fel 87. So there's going to be a lot of news coming out over the next 6 to 12 months, certainly, Alex.
We appreciate the update, Iain, and all the best.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for hosting.